Hi everyone, this is Jim. I'm starting a new series of videos called Chess Basics, and this is the first one. In Chess Basics, I'm going to be talking about different topics, things that really every chess player ought to know, and I'm going to start out with the king and pawn endings. The king and pawn endings are interesting in their own right, and they're also very useful. If you're playing a complex game and you see a way to simplify it, but you'll end up in a king and pawn ending, if you know ahead of time whether that ending is a win, a loss, or a draw, then you can make that decision correctly. So it's really helpful to have this information securely stored away so you can access it when you need it. So the first tip I'm going to teach you here is something called the rule of the square. And the way the rule of the square works, it tells you whether the king can catch a pawn which is running away, trying to make a queen. So in the position on the board in front of you, it's white's turn to move. When the pawn moves, it's going to move forward 2 squares. Because it's trying to make a queen, it wants to get away as fast as possible. And the question is the king going to be able to save it? And what you do is you make a square, imagining in your head the position after the pawn moves. You make a square going across and down in equal lengths. And then you ask yourself, can the king step inside that square when it's his turn to move? Now, if the king were in any of these squares over here, he would be able to. But you see, right now the king is in a position 1 step outside, too far away to get inside the square. So let's see how this works in practice. It's white's turn to move. He moves the pawn. Black moves the king. It looks like he's almost catching up. In fact, he comes into contact with the pawn here, but it's white's turn to move at that point. And white can make a queen, and white will go on to win this game. So let's back up, and let's look at a slightly different position. We're going to move the king to this square and then see what happens. Now let's just first let's start by using the rule of the square. Here's the position of the pawn after it moves. Here's the square. And we ask ourselves, can the king step inside the square when it's his turn? And the answer is yes. So we know that the king is going to be able to stop the pawn, but let's see how it works in practice. White moves forward, the king steps inside the square. We repeat. Each time the square gets smaller and smaller. And we finally get down to this 2x2 square, and now we see there's no way that the white pawn could get away. It can make a queen, but the king will capture it on the next step. So this position is a draw. And there are other tries. For one thing, since we looked at moving the pawn and that didn't work, the other thing white can try is he can try moving the king, with the idea that if the king gets over here, he could perhaps walk down together with the pawn, get to one of these squares, and help the pawn become a queen. So next time we'll take a look at that, see if that can work. See you then. Bye.